Welcome to another episode of My Wake Up Call. This is the podcast where I get to know a little bit about my guests, and I want to save getting to know them much better for the podcast. And because I know you, our listeners and viewers who see videos of the podcast, seem to like that. And I'm thrilled and embarrassed to have Joshua Page on. Not embarrassed for him, but I'm embarrassed because he said he's a real fan of mine. And he's read my book, so I'm like humma. But anyway, thank you, Josh, for doing that. But let me tell you about him. He's a husband, a father, an electrician, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and he has a new book, his first, called "What Does Your Daddy Do?" And he's also added author to his many titles, which he's very proud of. We can talk about the imposter syndrome. I got a shitload of that myself. Anyway, he's an electrician by trade. Page is passionate about informing the younger generation of all the career options they have in addition to college. He believes that choosing a trade and working with his hands saved his life and allowed him to have the life he loves. As a father of two, his mission is to teach his children and their generation about how fulfilling a career in the trades can be, and to encourage them to follow their own path in life. I'll share something with you, which I don't think it's a put down. It's just a realization. So I'm so in my head that my wife will sometimes nag me to fix something. And I got to tell you, I fixed two things around the house, and I just keep walking back to them because I look at them and I say, I fixed those. I couldn't believe it. Really. I'm like staring at them. Oh my God, it actually works. So regardless of whether I could ever make a living doing it, it's so satisfying. So Josh,
It
well,
is. It is.
so tell us your story about what you've discovered and how that led to What Does Your Daddy Do? And yeah, I want you to really unpack not just that you can make a living using your hands, but just how satisfying it can be. The kind of closure you can get by using your hands that you can often never get trying to speak to your wife or your teenager.
Well, thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. I don't want to fan out. I've read your books. I love what you do, Mark, and I'm just so humbled and honored to really be here on your podcast. And I think to really dive deep here, right? That's what you want. You want to know the stories. We have to start back quite a few years. So it was a Friday night. My mom was dropping me off for football practice. And I remember shutting the door and just telling her I love her. And her speeding off into the parking lot on the way to the hospital because she was so nauseous. She just wasn't feeling well. She wasn't feeling right. And it was almost about a week. And Dad picked me up that night from football practice. It was his weekend. And the next day, I remember standing in the kitchen and my dad got a phone call. Yeah, we'll be right there. Josh, get in the truck. We got to go see your mom at the hospital. Dad dropped me off at the hospital. He didn't stay because I was with the rest of my family, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. We all waited. And then came the news that mom had a malignant brain tumor and was being rushed into surgery. And I remember just being in that room, just so scared and lonely. I wasn't sure what that even meant at that time. And a few hours later, a nurse came out and guided me down the hall to go see mom in the ICU. And I remember hearing the shuffling of the nurses and doctors' feet, the beeping of the machines. And there in the distance was mom. She was laying on the hospital bed with a big blanket on her, wires all over the place, machines to the left and to the right of her, and a big bandage wrapped around her head. And mom had this little crooked tooth right here. And I remember just seeing her give me this little smirk, like, it's okay, Josh, And I don't know if it was the smell of that hospital or seeing mom on that hospital bed, but I was sick to my stomach. And we would go back and forth to that hospital over the next year or so with chemotherapy and radiation treatments. And there was only one good thing about that hospital, and that was the ice cream machine, because I could get chocolate or vanilla and any topping that I wanted. And it was awesome. That was the best part about that hospital. And back at home, in our living room, we had a small little house with a small little living room, and she had a couch on the back wall. And at the front of that couch was the front of our house where the window was, and that was mom's perch. She used to sit up there and watch me and my friends play football and the cars going by. She would watch people walking their dogs. Like, that was her perch. And every night at 7 and 7:30, she would religiously watch Wheel of Fortune and then Jeopardy. And eventually that couch was replaced by a hospital bed. And it was the same hospital bed that I saw mom in that day in the ICU. And pretty soon she wasn't able to get out of that bed. And my family made a decision that she could no longer care for me, and that dad was going to get full custody. So I moved to my dad's house, and I was giving up my dog. I was giving up the house that I only ever known. And it was early in February. I was sleeping on the top bunk of my stepbrother's bed, and he was 6 years younger than me and super big into Barney. So he had Barney curtains and sheets and blankets and a pillowcase. And my dad, all 6'2" of him, walked into that room so slowly, and he put his calloused hand on my shoulder and woke me up. Josh, wake up. Josh, wake up. And I sat up, all confused because it was so early in the morning. I said, what? He said, your mom died this morning. I was 13 years old, and I just lost my best friend, my mom, to cancer. And I was mad, and I was angry, and I didn't know what to do. I was lost. And I was living in a house that I only visited every other weekend since I was 2 years old. Me and my stepmom never got along that well. And a few months passed, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was going to run away. So that day, I put the mountain bike on the side of the garage. I lived in the basement at that time in my own room. And in the middle of the night, I snuck out that basement door. I grabbed the mountain bike. I threw it over the chain link fence. And I remember putting my hands on that chain link with the peak of the chain link smashing into my palms and my hands as I jumped over. And I rode that bike as fast as I could to my girlfriend's house, about 30 minutes away. I had it, but I was scared. I was petrified. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just didn't want to live there anymore. And I got to my girlfriend's house, and I threw some rocks up at her window, wake her up. And all of a sudden I see her bedroom light go on, and then her front porch light go on, and then the front door open, and out stepped her mother. I was like, busted. My aunt came and picked me up that night, and I slept at her house. I went to school in the morning, and then that night I went back to live with my dad. And they weren't happy. I was a runaway, but neither was I. I was angry. I was lonely. I didn't know what was going on. And this whole time, I wasn't a good student. I was a C&D student. I wasn't really getting into trouble, but I just didn't like school. I knew I wasn't going to college. And I found out about this school that you only had to go to school 2 weeks out of the month, and the other 2 weeks were in a trade. So I was like, sign me up. And growing up, I always liked the makeup in the movies. And I remember going to Disney World with mom and seeing like Pirates of the Caribbean and the animatronics. So that's what I wanted to do. So I went to this trade school thinking I was going to go into cosmetology and learn how to do makeup. Well, I soon found out what cosmetology really was about, and I couldn't picture myself doing French tips, French braids, and manicures for the rest of my life. So I looked into plumbing, and I failed out of plumbing. I had a lot of friends going to electrical, and I said, okay, that's where I'm going to go. High school wasn't easy. I was constantly in trouble, still maintain a high C&D average. And I ended up running away again junior year. This time I had a car, and I went to my aunt's house, and I didn't go back to my dad's. I graduated, just barely, but I did graduate high school. And then I started for a big electrical company. And I worked there for about 8 years before starting my own company. And it's been a lot of ups and downs over the last 11 years in business, but this is where it got me to today. And the reason why I wrote the book, and the reason why I speak to kids about the trades and to educating parents. I was invited to go to Career Day about 5 years ago. And I looked around the room, and there was a financial advisor, a chiropractor, environmental police, a fireman. And I said, either I'm in the wrong place, or I don't know what the hell I'm doing, because why am I here? And I decided to tell my story, the same story I just told all of you, to those kids. And I spent 5 minutes talking about becoming an electrician. And the teacher had all the kids leave after, and the teacher said, Josh, I've never seen a group of kids stay so quiet for so long and listen to your every single word. And I said, you know why? Because I wanted them to know me as a human being. And I wanted them to know that it doesn't matter their past or where they came from. They can do whatever they want in life. And if they choose an electrician, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. And I started thinking, how can I make a bigger impact in this world and in our generations and our kids, other than just Career Day? And then March of 2020 happened, and the whole world shut down, and I had some extra time on my hand. So I thought about those kids in high school, and I thought about the kids at my wife's daycare, and I said, there's got to be somewhere in between that I can reach out to them and plant the seed in the younger generation that trades is an option, that becoming an electrician or a carpenter or a plumber, that college is not the only option, that you can do whatever you want in life, and the trades are really needed right now. So that's when the whole book got started. I wrote, What Does Your Daddy Do in 2020? And then honestly, self-doubt creeped in, and I did nothing with it. And in 2021 is when I looked at it again. I pulled it up on Microsoft Word. I said, Josh, show up. You're going to write this book, and you're going to do it. It's not for you. It's for the kids out there. It's for those lost and confused kids that grew up just like you, that weren't great at school, that didn't fit the mold, that might have had a parent die or raised by their grandparents, or just didn't know what they wanted to do in life. And the trades saved you, Josh. So this is where you're going to write this book, and this is why you're going to write this book. So I found a publisher, and in, I think, July of this year, it was published and it came out. And that's What Does Your Daddy Do? And that's the story behind it, Mark.
Wow. I could see why those kids just stepped mesmerized, because you're mesmerizing. It's a great story. Um, can you talk about the satisfaction of being in the trades? Because you're right, it's something that's not seen as an option. It's in many areas, it gets, in the fancy cities, it gets looked down on. And yet it's a very noble calling. I mean, there's a need for the trades. I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I fixed a couple things. Most stuff I can't fix. And I'm just so amazed at the ingenuity and how they're able to fix certain things that after they do it, that seemed like common sense, but I never would have come up with it ever. And they're dedicated, they work hard, they're honorable. And I'm glad that I'm not that glad as the consumer at paying some of them, well over 100 or more per hour, for the labor. But it's there's something to that. And if you're listening in and you're thinking to yourself, or your child is thinking, school is not for them, it's not it's not a step down necessarily, or less than to go into the trades. There's something there's something to be proud of.
So let me break this down, I think, in a few parts, and hopefully answer your question. So back to my high school, I screwed out. I screwed around until senior year. I was just in that mindset. You know, I didn't know what to do. I was confused. I felt alone at times. I had no real structure, right? And I was bouncing around. So it wasn't until senior year that I started to really pay attention to the electrical trade. And I think what made sense to me back then was instant gratification. And what I mean by that is when we were to take the wires and wire them up to a switch, and then take that switch and wire up to the light, and then we put a light bulb in there and we flip the switch, that light bulb comes on. And I'm like, wow, I just did that. And then I would build something else. And I'd be like, wow, I just did that. And I think the same thing goes for a lot of the trades. The same thing with the plumbers. When you put the faucet together along with some piping, and then you turn the water on and water comes out, it's like you just did that. Like nobody else did that for you. And I think for me, that's what clicked back in my senior year in high school. And when I started to really fall in love with the trade, is I was like, wow, I can actually do that. And I'm proud of myself. Like I didn't need anyone else to tell me how proud they were of me. You know, I was searching for it. My aunt was a wonderful woman. My aunt and uncle that helped raise me, they were fantastic. My grandparents helped as well, and they always told me they were proud. But you know, I was always looking for mom to tell me, right? But when I did that on my own, I was like, wow, this is incredible. I did that. And I think over the years, as I've worked in the trades and now become a contractor, and I own multiple businesses, and now speaking with kids and doing all this, I think I've dialed it down to who really does well in the trades, because this is how I operate. Visual learners, right? We don't do that well in school by auditory, because the teachers are just telling us, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to write this story, you need to do this homework. And I would honestly zone them out. But visually, as soon as I can see somebody doing something, whether, and it doesn't matter what it is, fixing a car, painting a wall, doing electrical work, when I visually see that, it clicks in my brain. I'm like, oh, I can do that now. But I have to see it first, and then I can build it in my mind and I can do it. And then kinesthetically, when I touch things and can build it with my hands, I can understand it and build it in my brain. So I think that's the two aspects that work very well in the trades, is if you're very kinesthetic and very visual. I've noticed that over the years of hiring young apprentices and asking, you know, electricians what they do best at and how they work best, and just looking at everything on a much bigger scale. That's what I think it comes down to, is those are the kids that do the best in the trades. And I hope that answers your question, Mark. I feel like I kind of went sideways there, but that's what I think works the best. And that's what worked for me over all these years. It just makes the most amount of sense to me.
So when you're speaking to kids, what are the kind of questions they ask you, other than how much can you make as an electrician?
Most of the kids want to know like the coolest jobs that you've done, or like the neatest places that you've worked at. You know, that's what they really want to know. They don't, to be honest with you, high school kids don't really get dollar amount. You know, like I didn't know what my mom made per hour. I didn't know what my dad made per hour. You know, they don't really get that. When you tell them $100,000 a year, that could be $1 billion to them. Like they just, I don't think they understand those numbers. As adults, you start to understand it, and health insurance and, you know, vacation time. But I have a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that work for me that don't even care about vacation time. Because really, they just want to work, right? There's no, why do we take vacation? We take vacation to get away from work, to spend time with family and kids, and they don't have any of that. So, they might take a day off to go fishing or to go hang out with their buddies or something, but they don't really understand that either. So I think to really get the kids to understand that the trades is an option, and I'm not pushing the trades. I'm not saying not to go to college, because there's certain, we need college, right? I'm never saying not to go to college, because you don't want this guy as your heart surgeon, right? But I just want the parents and the kids to know that the trades is an option, right? It always seems like, oh, if you don't know what you want to do in life, go to college. If you're confused, oh, just take some night classes. So it was always like college, or join the military, or get a job. But it's like, what if this kid growing up was the one always fixing dirt bikes, or always climbing trees, or always building Legos? Like, why don't you go look into carpentry? Or why don't you go look into being a plumber or a welder or a roofer? Nobody really brings up that conversation. And I think, to me, that's the biggest part. So to answer your question on what the kids are asking, I think high school is almost a little too late. And I think we need to educate the parents and teach the younger generations just about the trades. Like, almost like, we talk so much about firemen and policemen and doctors when kids are growing up, because that's what they see in the community. But what they don't see is who has been the busiest since the pandemic. The trades, right? Everyone's at home. Everyone has a home office now. So everyone needs to build a home office, do electrical in the home office. Oh, now I can finally get my sink working that I hasn't been working for the last 2 years, because I'm home and I can have the plumber come to the house now. So these are the things that people have really noticed over the last 2 years. Like, wow, we really can't do anything without the trades.
So I'll ask you, you kind of ran ahead, but as soon as you said, oh, the kids don't ask about money, they ask about, tell us about a cool place you worked or a cool job. So maybe I'm just a kid at heart. So you piqued my curiosity. Tell us about a cool job you did and a cool place you worked.
Yeah, so I think my favorite client is Great Wolf Lodge in New England. We do all of their work there, and it's just amazing to be able to work on things such as the water slides, or to see all the pumps down underneath where the wave pool is, to walk around and to just see all the kids happy that they're at this big, huge water park. And I think, to me, like, that's the coolest, is I love going to places like that, because my kids then tell their friends, like, oh, my dad's working at Great Wolf Lodge. Isn't that cool? And I love being relevant. I love being the one that is looked up to, that is depended on. And when we drive down, mostly any towns around in our area, I can tell my kids, hey, I worked in that building, or I wired that, or I did that. You see that? I was part of that. Like, to me, that's always cool about the trades. Back when I worked for a big electrical contractor, when I first graduated from trade school, I worked at UMass Amherst in Amherst, Massachusetts, and they had these four big dorm buildings. There were 12-story units, four buildings, and then they had tunnels underneath where all the steam pipes are going, all the electrical pipes. And that was really cool too, because nobody is ever going to be in those tunnels, unless you're working there. So that was really, really neat to be working in as well.
Wow. I went to UMass for a year.
Did
Amherst.
you?
Yeah, I picked
Zoomass, as they call it.
that's right. I picked up your accent. This is how old I am. I was uh, I was there when uh, who was the NBA player? Doctor Julius Irving,
Oh, Dr. Irvin. Yeah.
Dr. J. He was there.
Yeah.
That was the year I was there. There was a singer there, Natalie Cole. She was Nat King Cole's daughter. So that's a long,
Oh
long,
my gosh.
real fond
Wow,
memory.
that's amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I worked a lot there. I did a lot of work there.
it was a beautiful school.
It is.
I'm sure I wouldn't recognize it. So where can people find out more about you and the book?
So I'm on Facebook, Joshua Page on Facebook. The book is available on Amazon. It's available from Barnes and Noble, anywhere online that books are sold. This is a book right here. What does your daddy do? This is going to be the first book in the series, Mark. So my next one coming out is going to be for plumber and HVAC, and then carpenter, then welder, and then cosmetologist. I'm going to end with it with cosmetologist. And I'm also going to be doing a What Does Your Mommy Do series. So that way we can celebrate all the females in the trades and let the younger girls know in the young generations that you can do anything you want in life. You can be an electrician as a female. You can be a carpenter as a female. You know, the reason why I did cosmetologist, one, for my story, but also because I wanted to celebrate both sexes in cosmetology as well. There's a lot of males in that trade and there's a lot of females. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with either one. But I think we get like a bad stigma that you can't be a female electrician or a female welder. And that's not the case at all. So I want to celebrate both sides, but we will have a What Does Your Mommy Do book series as well. And I really hope it's going to educate the kids as they grow up of just another option. You know, that's all. I just want them to know that the option is there, because I know what it did for my life. And I want the same for those other kids that they're lost or confused and don't have that direction. And I want to take personal responsibility to teach them about the trades.
Well, I think you're a great spokesperson. You're a great storyteller. I'm just trying to think about how to get this. Well, you're getting it out by being on the podcast, but there's something there, because there's a lot of kids who, if they feel they can't make it in those college-bound things, that they're just losers. They should just give up. And and then the opioid and drug and alcohol problems that follow when you just give up because you think there's nothing for you. I think it's great that you're offering this other option. And I'm trying to think of the kinds of schools or how you'd get this out to the schools. Because I would imagine that a lot of high schools get caught up in the, oh no, we got to get our kids getting into college. We're judged by how many go into college, yada, yada, yada. And I think there's a place for this, as you say, another choice. But is there I would imagine there's like an American Association of Trades or various trades.
There's got to be something. I think it's just the more we get the word out, the more people are listening and watching. I think that's all we can do, really. I mean, we can talk to local government and try to get them to push the trades, but there's a lot of kids, I think, that are getting pushed into trade schools right now that are more college bound than they are trade bound, right? So like if I tried to go into a trade school right now with my grades and the way I was back in 8th grade, there's no way they would have accepted me. No way. Right now, I feel like you need like a minimum of B average, perfect attendance, close your hands in your lap and don't say a word. It just seems like there's a shift in the trade schools that they're pushing more towards college. And it's like, that doesn't really make sense to me. These kids went to trade school to learn a trade. You can go to college after a trade school 100%, but you can in high school too. So are we just teaching them a trade just to have as an adult, so that way you know how to change your brakes? Or are we bringing them through this trade school so that way they can be a productive member of society in the trades? I don't know. And I think also I'd like to say, Mark, that if the trades aren't for you and college isn't for you, that's fine. But for any kids, any teenagers, any young adults that are listening to this podcast, I want you to tell you one thing, and I want you to listen really good. And that's to find your purpose and live life with passion. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you want to be. I don't care where you want to go. But if you don't know your purpose on this earth, then you're not going to get anywhere. And it's going to be a rough road. And I want you to live your life with passion, with love, because there's just too much hatred out there, and there's not enough days on this earth to live like that. Live life with passion and find your purpose, no matter what it is, and you will live life every single day. But if you're not, it's going to be a tough road, right? And it's tough to find that purpose, but you've got to find it deep within your heart of hearts, and it's there. Mark Twain has a famous saying that I just absolutely love. He says there's two important dates in your life. Number one was the day you were born. And number two is the day you find out why. The day you find out why.
Well, I can see why I had you on the podcast, Josh. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this information, because you're right. It's valuable. It's an option. It's not necessarily a subject I've covered before, but that's my shortcoming, not yours. And I'm so glad that we had the chance to spend some time together. And to our listeners, if you have kids, or even you yourself are struggling with the options in your life, and the trades may never have seemed to you to be an option, consider them. And one of the best ways to do that is to check out what Josh Page is up to, and check out his book, which is the first in what sounds like is going to be a long series, What Does Your Daddy Do? So, and you can find it wherever booksellers are sold. So go check it out. So thank you, Josh. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure too. So to our listener, thank you for tuning in. Please share this with people who may be looking for something, and this is just hidden in plain sight. This is an opportunity for them to find a path for them where they can find fun, purpose, passion, and actually earn a decent living. And there's going to be an increasing need for people in the trades as we go forward. So to all of you, take care and take care of yourselves, and please share this podcast. Bye-bye.